Hello again, everyone. This is Wade here. There's a saying of you could give a man a fish and you could feed him for a day, and if you teach a man to fish, you feed him for life, right? So I'm going to attempt to show you some basic principles around working with clay, so that you have like an idea of how the materials work together. And basically clay is, well, you have the clay itself and then the water, and then in the end fire comes into play. And to have good workable clay, so I don't know if at this point you want to just get my hands kind of, to get good workable clay, which is what we have here. You see it's nice and soft and fairly smooth. It's a combination of water and the clay particles. And this is some local Austin clay, right? So here's this chunk I processed the other day at the river. This chunk is I didn't process so much, but I'm finding that there's lumps in there. So one of the ways to get this to be a smoother clay is just go through with your fingers, and you can feel for the larger chunks and just pull them out with your fingers. There could be all kinds of things in the clay. There could be stones or sand. It's okay if there's sand in the clay. It'll just be kind of a gritty clay. What these chunks are is these are hard pieces of clay that haven't been crushed. So if your clay is wet enough, or if you add water, you can crush those pieces and just have them be part of the clay. Right now what I'm doing is I'm just going through and I'm pulling the larger pieces out. And then you get some nice workable stuff. It's good to kind of work it in your hands a bit. I roll it and then fold it. And this helps to get air pockets out and just make it more uniform, so that when you go to make something, you have a nice clean slate, clean material that you're working with. So I'll leave the rest of that to filter that later. Again, with water being, you always want to keep your clay wrapped tight if it's in a good, otherwise it'll just dry out and you'll have to start from this stage. So this is some clay that I found. Sometimes you'll find clay, it'll be soft. Sometimes you'll find clay like this. When I found this, it was in a chunk. It was in a stream and I washed it off, got the moss off of it, and I started breaking it up. And I've brought a piece right here. So oftentimes it's just easier to if it gets too hard to work, sometimes it just makes sense to dry it out, because when you dry it all the way out and then add water, so this piece right here, I added water about 10 minutes ago. I'm adding a little bit more, and I'm gonna add a little bit of water to that, and we'll come back to see how those hard chunks do with the water. And with these, what I'm gonna do is I have a crushing stone here, and I'm actually gonna crush them into smaller pieces. This is actually a good place for a All right, so this is a sifting step where we can sift out just the finer particles. This is a regular house screen, and I guess I need to get all these. As you're doing this, it's an opportunity to pick out impurities like larger, any stones that you want to pull out, or I always try to keep other non-clay bits out, like sticks and leaves and what have you. And so we can sift that and then dump this off to crush some more. So you see here we have a really nice, fine finished product that's ready to be ready for the ingredient of water. Okay, so we've got it crushed up. Come see, there's a coarse and a fine, and I'm gonna add some water to this coarse stuff because it'll take a little longer for the water to do its work. I'm gonna be careful to hopefully not add too much, because we can always add more. I guess I filled it up to almost, I'm gonna put these, you see those dry specks, I'm gonna make sure they get in there. And that's gonna soak in. We'll give that a little bit of time. And in the meantime, we'll add some water to this. And if you do end up with too much water, it's okay, because it'll dry out. And you can have fun with the mess that it makes. Okay, that's probably gonna be, so now let's come over here to these clumps that we had added water to earlier and see how they're doing. So it's soaked up the water, and I would add a little bit, probably a little bit more water to what that is to get it to go. So maybe we didn't have to crush it as fine as we did. And let's see, in this stuff, there you can see that there's a little bit of dryness. So we would have to add more water to those, to at least that one. Particularly, add a little bit more water. Maybe we'll come back to that. And so I'm not getting my hands so dirty. Where is it? Here's the fork. So I'll give this one a stir. All right, and I can already see now that I've added a fair amount more water than is workable, but with the dry day like we have it, maybe it'll even be ready later today. And let's see how this stuff did. This stuff looks maybe near perfect if there's not any dry clumps. Oh, and actually it's pretty wet too. It's quite wet. So what we'll do is we'll set these in a way such that they'll dry, and we'll come back and show you how they look a little bit later.